Hi Stitchy friends, I'm Barb, also known as Stitch Brat here on YouTube and also over on Instagram where I'm very active and you can follow me there if you'd like. You've reached my channel. This is called Stitch Brat Stew and it's a channel all about my hobby, counted cross stitch. And this is Flosstube number 3. And today is Friday, September 1st, 2023. And I have quite a bit to share with you since the last time I made a video, which was about a month ago. I have, amazingly enough, I have 2 finishes. I have, I think, 13 whips or works in progress that I worked on during the last month. And I have some purchases because my birthday was at the end of July and I got some gift cards to 123 Stitch for my birthday, so I managed to easily spend those. So I'll share those purchases with you. And then our teeny topic today is going to be stitching on dark fabric and some tips for doing that. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start with my finishes, I believe. So my first finish is, this was for Sherry, the Colorado Cross Stitchers Cross Stitch Camp, and this was for the August challenge. This is a small called Justice. The challenge was to stitch something with something new to you, so a new fabric, a new designer, you know, whatever, but something new. Challenge yourself. So for me, the designer of this was new. This was Little Robin Designs. And also I stitched this with sulky 12 weight cotton thread. And I had never used sulky before. So this is on, I'll bring it up a little closer. This is on 36 count fabric. It was just a scrap of linen that I had in my drawer, so I'm not sure what it is. Some kind of a mocha or tan color. So it's stitched 1 strand of sulky over 2 threads of linen. And people say that sulky gives about the coverage of 1.5 strands of DMC, and I think that's probably accurate. Like I said, this is 36 count, and I was very happy with the coverage on this. I think it came out, I think it's beautiful, and I think it came out great. It's a red color. I'm not sure which one. Sulky doesn't use color names. They just have numbers. I don't remember which one it is, but it's very pretty. And this is what the pattern front looks like also, just in case you're interested. It's a set of 3 sort of patriotic smalls from Little Robin Designs that probably came out this summer, around Memorial Day or something like that. But this was my favorite one of those, so I thought this came out great. And I was very proud of myself because this was the first year that I managed to do something for all 3 months of cross stitch camp. I think the first year that I did it, I managed either 1 or 2 finishes, and then last year I'm not even sure I did anything, or maybe I did one. I managed to get through June, but this was the first year I did all 3, so I was happy about that. So that was also a new start. So that was both a new start and a finish in August, and so is this next piece. If you saw my first video, I had a finish of a bird, sort of a stylized bird that I did. It was from a set of bird patterns, and I've got another one from that same set. This is bird number 3. That was bird number 4, and this is bird number 3, who I have affectionately started calling the Admiral. Very cleverly, Admiral Bird. Anyway, I really like these patterns. There's a set of 4. They all use the same set of colors, basically. This one had maybe one different one than was in the first one. But these are from a designer called Nikki Pattern, Nikki Pattern on Etsy. She's easy to find. She's got some great patterns. In fact, I think I have another design I'll show you of hers later. But this is the Admiral. So he was both a start and a finish this month. And he is on 18 count oatmeal Aida. And he's stitched with the called for DMC palette, two strands of DMC over one square of Aida. And I just love how he came out. I just think he's so cute. And he was a bit of an unexpected finish toward the end of the month. I mean, I hadn't really planned on finishing him, but toward the end of the month, my older son came to visit, and I needed something sort of simple to work on while we talked and so forth. So Mr. Bird turned out to be a good choice. Okay, so let's move to whips. And I've got a board here I'm going to try to use for my bigger whips and see how that works. But okay, so my first work in progress that I worked on during the month, this is Scrabble. So this is a picture of what it's going to look like. It's basically just a Scrabble board with kind of an elaborate border around it. And this was designed by Vivsters on Etsy. And she's a very popular designer. She's got some great designs. And this Scrabble board, you can stitch either in the traditional colors, like a real Scrabble board, which is what I'm doing, or she's also offers a alternative colorway that I think that comes all together. Like you don't have to pay extra for it if you want the alternative colorway. But I'm doing the traditional colors. I just wanted mine to look like a real Scrabble board. And let's see how this is going to work. All right. It's kind of hard to show this because it's quite big. All right. Here's my Scrabble board, where it is so far. I work on this. This is what I call my morning coffee project. And I work on this every day with my morning coffee. And that's pretty much the only time I work on it. So some days that's, half an hour before I start work. Some days it's a little bit longer than that. Weekends it might be an hour and 15 minutes or something like that I work on it. It just kind of depends. But as you can see, I've gotten quite a bit done, and I've gotten, I'm not halfway through those center tiles, but I'm getting there, and I'll probably get there pretty soon. The center tiles go fairly quickly. They're mostly just simple stitching, but some of the tiles do have, if you can see, there's a little motif in some of them that's a darker color, so they're not completely one color. And obviously the colored ones have the DL and TL and all that in them for the Scrabble. So that's where I am on Scrabble. And I don't really have a finished date on that. I'm hoping to get it finished this year, but again, I just work on that with my morning coffee, and then wherever I get to, I get to. And I did actually take a little bit of time off from that this month. And I'll explain why later, actually. So there were a few days, maybe 5 or 6 days, that I didn't work on Scrabble for my morning coffee project, and I worked on something else. But mostly I worked on that. Okay. My next whip is Carrot Cake by Carolyn Manning. And if you've seen either of my other 2 videos, or you follow me on Instagram, you'll know that Carolyn Manning is absolutely one of my favorite designers. And these designs in particular, which she calls her Shooting Star collection, based on a Shooting Star design quilts, are my favorite. And I've completed several of them, and then this is another one. So this is Carrot Cake. Sorry, my board is new, so I'm probably going to forget to use it, but I'm going to try here. So this is carrot cake. And here's where I am. I don't know, it's this, for me, this whip is deceiving because I feel like I work on it quite a bit. And yet, I don't know, I look at it and I don't really see a whole lot of progress. I don't exactly know why that is. Obviously, it's full coverage, so there's a lot of stitching in it. Maybe that's the only reason. But I worked on this probably 6 or 7 stitching sessions, so I don't know, probably at least 8 hours, and I don't really see a whole lot of change. But we're getting there slowly but surely. It'll get done. And I love the fall colors. I'm not really a seasonal stitcher. Well, I'm not a seasonal stitcher at all, but sometimes it's fun to, stitch colors that are close to the season. So I probably will be bringing this one out again in the fall, not just because it's fall, but also I would like to, this is my Carolyn Manning that's closest to a finish. So I probably will, if I can, try to get that one done this year. I don't know if it'll happen, but we'll see. Oh, I'm sorry, that is on, gotta remind myself, that is on 32 count light, I believe that's light taupe Lugana from Zweigart, and I'm just using all the called for DMC colors that she calls for in the pattern. All right. One of the things that I do, and I'm doing it with my friend Carla, she's Stitch Me Sane here on YouTube and also on Instagram. You should check her out if you haven't already. We have a little game that we do that was actually the brainchild of Marjorie Made Stitches, and it's called Pickle Whip, and there is actually this is the Pickle Whip jar. So we just came up with, Carla and I came up with a bunch of prompts. We put them in the jar, and then every Friday I pick a prompt for us both. It applies to us both. And we find one of our whips that meets that prompt, and then we work on that for the next week. Obviously not exclusively, but we try to give that whip, whatever, a few sessions or whatever we decide to do. So that's actually helped me quite a bit already. We've been doing it for, I don't know, 6 weeks or so. And I actually have a couple finishes because of those prompts. The last one last week, I picked Bird for the second time, and I ended up working on the Admiral there and getting him finished. So that's nice. And then this next whip, this next whip is, okay, this is from Modern Folk Embroidery, and this is Nordic Heart. And this, I only have a black and white picture, but it doesn't really matter because this is a monochromatic piece. And I think if I was showing you a color picture, it would just be red on white. So I figured it was fine to show the black and white. I'm not doing red on white, as you'll see in a minute, but Jacob's designs are just amazing. But anyway, my Pickle Whip, this was my chosen whip for the Pickle Whip prompt Heart when I chose that, because I had not worked on this for quite a while. I started, I think, I don't know, maybe Valentine's Day last year, 2022. I'm not positive. I can't remember, but okay, oops. Sorry, thread here. Okay, this is, I am stitching this, just jab myself with a needle. I'm stitching this on 32 count Vintage Rose Lugana. And I think that this is from Fiber on a Whim, because I bought several colors of Fiber on a Whim Lugana, but I seem to have taken the tag off. But I'm pretty sure that this was one of her colors. And it's just beautiful. And the thread I'm using is Thread Gather's Silken Colors in the color Simply Strawberry, and I'll just hold up the bag. It's a beautiful variegated pink. And prior to this month, I had part of that big heart, the sort of border inside the heart, filled part of the way around. So I managed to finish all that, and then I started the kind of embellishments on the outer part of the heart. Interestingly, if you stitch this pattern, I will just give you a little heads up, and I do recommend you stitch it. It's beautiful. Right along in here, in that area on both sides. I mean, if you've done any modern folk embroidery patterns, they're usually, like once you get the pattern of something in a row or an area, you can usually just follow it along. There, you can't. There's one section to make the counting work where the count between two identical elements is different just in one little spot. And of course, I didn't catch that until after I'd already stitched it, and it didn't work out at the bottom. So I had to take all that out and restitch it. So if you stitch it, be aware of that. And I made a note for the other side of the pattern when I get there. Okay. My next whip is, this is Martin Luther King, my little portrait here. Kind of one of those stylized graphic designs. This is from Mumla X Stitch on Etsy, M-U-M-L-A, but you will not find that shop right now because it's a Russian shop and it's closed right now, or doesn't appear on Etsy. She has some beautiful patterns. This one was obviously my favorite. This I work on during virtual meetings at work when I have to pay attention, but I don't actually have to, present anything or other than that, participate. And I did have a couple meetings this month, and I also tried to work on him a little bit besides that. So here he is. I think he's looking pretty good. I mostly worked up here, and then I worked down in this area. And I also worked some, this is my just mindless stitching area. So when I just need to stitch when I'm talking to somebody or something like that, I can just work on this block and just fill it in and not have to think twice about it. Some of the other stitching is actually you have to do pretty careful counting, but as you can see, I'm working my way down to his lips, and I think he's looking pretty good. This is always a popular piece when I show it on Instagram, which isn't very often because I don't regularly work on it, but he's so colorful, and as a person, I mean, he was such a dynamic person, and I think it just gets a lot of attention, and that makes me really happy, and I would definitely like to get that done at some point. Kind of slow going when you only work on it a little bit like I do. That is on 32 count white Lugana with the called for DMC. There are quite a few colors in that. I'm doing that 2 strands of DMC over 2 threads of Lugana. All right, next we have, okay, this is Blackberry House by Plum Street Samplers, and this is what it's going to look like. This is a little bit of an older pattern. I think this came out in 2015, so a lot of people have already stitched this. I was kind of late, I guess, to the party, but I love this design. and I bought it when I was visiting my son in New York, the pattern, so it has a little bit of memory there attached. I worked on this not a ton in August, but more than what's indicated because I made a mistake that I had to rip out. So here's where I am. I've just got some of those stars done, and then I'm starting on the like this that big urn thing is right here, and so I'm starting on the berries and the leaves and stuff in the urn. So what happened was, a lot of what I stitch usually has borders, and I'm used to doing a border and then counting from the border. That's just a lot of times the way I work. And this, of course, has no side borders. So somehow I messed up these two flowers or motifs, and I don't know, I forget, like they were out too far or something. But anyway, I probably just counted wrong from up here. So I ended up having to, I don't remember. I think just the big one was in. But anyway, I had to frog the whole thing. So what I did, although I don't think you can see it on here, I just ran a length of thread down both sides, coming from here and coming from here, so that I can match it up to the pattern. And I just have something to help guide me if I need to count in like I did on those. So I can just have a double check for myself. And hopefully that won't happen. I won't make that kind of a stupid mistake again. So this is on, what is this on? This is on a 36 count, kind of a tan linen that was a linen I got from a Fabric of the Month club. So I don't know what it is. I'm not even sure it has a name. But it's a pretty tan. It's a very pretty, that's the true color. It's a very pretty tan mottled fabric. And the threads I'm using a combination of what's called for overdyed threads, and then I substituted a few overdyed threads also that I just had in my stash, like from, I think like a grab bag that I purchased. So some of the colors aren't exact, but they're close. The color I'm using in particular for the urn in the pattern, my silver or gray is darker than the one that Paulette called for, but I like it just as well, and I have a bunch of it, and I figured it was, it's good to use your stash, right? Okay. All right. My next WIP is called Soup of the Day, and this one I do not have a picture of, so I will have to put a picture here. This is from a shop called Oh My Stitches on Etsy, and I've done several of her wreath patterns and some other things. She's got some really cute things on there. So let me make sure I've got this going the right way. It goes like this. By the way, this is just a little thing I do. I notice a lot of times when I watch Flosstube, and I've done this myself on here, it's really easy to get your project turned around and not be showing it at the right orientation. But what I do is in the left-hand corner, the upper left-hand corner, I put one of those little bulb pins in on almost every project. So I can always tell what the upper left-hand corner is. And I don't have to, I don't know, I'm too lazy to put stitches in or something, which I could also do. I've also labeled it top in that corner with a pen before, but I actually like the little pins for that purpose. So I try to always do that, and it's come in handy more often than you'd think. All right, so here's my progress on this. So as you saw, this is a wreath, and it's going to say Soup of the Day, wine. I'm a wine lover. I I didn't get too much done in this. I can't remember how many days I worked on it, but I just love this. The colors are so bright and vibrant, just really pretty. So this is on that 32 count linen that I've mentioned before that I had from like 20 years ago. That was one of my favorite linens. This was one of my last little scrap pieces of it. All the threads are the called for DMC with the exception of one of the greens in the leaves was really close to another green, and to me, when I stitched it in, they frankly looked identical and I couldn't even tell them apart. So I lightened up the lighter of the green shade, maybe just a couple numbers of DMC to just make it a little bit lighter so it stood out more. But that's the only change that I made. Okay, this next one is an Ink Circles pattern, and this was my birthday start in July. So this is Cirque des Cercles, or Circus of Circles. And you probably know that Tracy has, this is a series, and Tracy has, I think there's 5 of them. There's circles and triangles and hearts and squares, and I'm sure I'm forgetting 1 or 2. But I love these, and I hope to stitch more than one. So these are great. Okay, so I'm stitching this on 16 count black Aida. And let me just fold this in half here so it'll be easier to show. And here is where it is. I've actually gotten quite a bit done on this last month. More than I probably expected that I would. I just love it. And as a surprise to myself, I'm actually not doing the border first for some unknown reason. I think it's because I'm using the variegated floss, and it's so much fun to see the variegation come alive in those motifs that I just can't bring myself to go back to doing the plain, one stitch plain border. But I'll bring it a little closer so you can see. I have my ring light right there, so it gets kind of blown out when I bring it close, but. So as I said, this is on 16 count black Aida, and the floss that I'm using is a silk floss from Dyeing for Cross Stitch is the company, and this is what it looks like. That's my cut pieces. Obviously it's variegated, and the color, this is the colorway Earth Walker. And so last month I talked about that I might possibly restart it because I felt like the silk was kind of fuzzy and I was not sure I loved it. But as I've worked with it more, it's not as bad as what I thought. It is a little bit fuzzier than some other silk that I've worked with, but it's okay. And viewers very kindly gave me some great tips for cutting fuzziness, like dampening my floss and so forth. So those things seem to be working too. So I think I'm just gonna continue with this. I love the colorway. So I think I'm gonna just continue it, and I'm fine with. Also, I think part of the fuzziness issue was the fact that there's so much contrast between, on a black fabric, between the fabric and the floss. So I think any fuzziness in the floss is just sort of accentuated because there's so much contrast. But it is a little bit fuzzier than, for instance, that the silken colors that I was that I'm using on that Nordic heart is not, there's just no fuzz to that at all. In fact, that silk is absolutely top notch. It is fantastic. I would just use that for anything. I just love her. I just love her stuff. But anyway, I'm going to keep going on circles, and I really like how it's turning out. Okay, next is, this is Remember Me by Teresa Kogut. And I got this actually last September as a patron, but this is released now as a regular chart. I think she released it at Nashville Market. So a lot of people have stitched it or are stitching it. It's beautiful, obviously. That border just knocked me out. I just love it. Let's see, where am I here? And I didn't work a whole ton on this, but I did work some. So here's where that's at. I knew that was going to happen. All right. So here's where I am on Remember Me. And what I mostly worked on, I think I had it like, was maybe to here, somewhere in here last time. So I got all this done, and then I also, oh no, I'm sorry, wrong side, I'm over here. I was done to like here, and I got all this done. And then I realized I mean, I hadn't forgotten, but I realized I'd left these flower petals undone just for some time when I needed some fill in. So I went back and I started filling in those, although I didn't quite get done. So I only worked a few days on that, but I just love how that's looking. And this is stitched on 37 count. It's a legacy linen, and I believe it's wild honey. Now, I looked it up online, and the pictures of wild honey online actually look a little bit darker than what this looks to me, but the other one I thought it could be was Russian tea cake, and when I compared those, there's no way it's Russian tea cake. And it looks like it looks like wild honey is the correct color. It's just that what I have looks lighter than what appears on the internet at the moment. I bought that a while ago, so maybe the color has just changed, or maybe it's just the way it photographs for the internet. I'm not sure. And I'm stitching that with all the DMC. I think Teresa calls for a combination of DMC and some overdyed flosses, but I'm using all the DMC, and I'm stitching that one 2 strands of floss over 2 threads of linen. And I think I've mentioned this before, it's a little tight. If I had it to do over again, I would try it either with 1 strand, or I would use a different count of fabric, like 32 or 36, where it was easier to use 2 strands. It's just those areas that are solidly stitched, like the petals of that flower, it just can be kind of tough going sometimes. Not impossible, but legacy linens I found in general, I've used a couple of them, just they're beautiful to stitch with. They have just a beautiful hand and weight, but they're very tight. They're very tightly woven, and it can be hard to get your needle in there. And like I said, 2 strands is pushing it on that fabric. However, I like how it looks, so I guess the end result is fine. Okay, another Carolyn Manning is next. This is Beachcomber. And again, I don't have a picture on this one, so I will put a picture in here. This is another shooting star design, colorway, excuse me. And this one is beautiful summery blues and greens. And you're probably familiar with this because I would say this is one of her more popular colorways, and there's numerous people stitching it on Instagram. It pops up and you see it on YouTube also. So there's where I am on that. I can't remember how many days I worked on this. Maybe 4. So I don't know that I got a ton done. I think I worked up in this area, I believe. Well, yeah, because there's a thread right there. That's where that's where I was working. When I'm done, I just stop. I don't necessarily finish a thread. Although I usually will finish a thread, but if it's like the end of the evening or something and I'm really tired, or I absolutely have to stop for some other reason, like to go make dinner or something like that, I'll just leave my thread in there, and it doesn't really bother me, but I guess showing on Flosstube, I probably should try to clean those up. But this is on 32 count light blue Lugana with the called for DMC 2/2, and I have several shooting star colorways going, and all of them are on 32 count Lugana in various colors, because my plan is someday to finish them all as pillows. So I'd like them to all be like the same size, and to have sort of a similar look to them. And I prefer even weave to like linen for those, because since they're full coverage, the stitches look neater and more perfect if they're on even weave, which is, of course, the threads are, perfect, instead of like linen where you have some thin and some thick threads. So that's why I chose even weave for those. Okay, my next one I also don't have a picture of. This is called Southern Land, so I'll put a picture here. And this is from Owl Forest Embroidery, which is a Russian company. You can still get their designs through, there's like a seller in the UK that they work with that sells their stuff, but I actually bought this design quite a while ago, the pattern quite a while ago. I did not buy the kit, and I'm kind of sorry after learning about how great their threads and stuff are, but so this is Southern Land, and here's where I am on this. I just love this piece. It's beautiful, and just all the things going on with just 4 colors of thread, I just find amazing. And I think I've told this story before, but I was a little bit skeptical of the 2 reds color choices, because one, the lighter red is actually 351, which is actually not a red to me. It's more like an orange red. So I kind of questioned that, and I was looking for one I liked better, but I never found one I liked better. And now that it's actually stitched, I mean, I wouldn't change it for the world. It looks fantastic. So I only worked a few days on this, but I think I got done. I finished this little garlandy thing, and then I got most of this done. I think I had the berries or something done, maybe. I don't know. I got most of that done. Oops. And this is on, I think this is 32 count. It's just plain white, bright white linen. Not antique white, actual white linen, I think from Zweigart. Because I felt like those colors, the blues and the reds, would really just make a great contrast against the white. And as I said, I did not get the Owl Forest Embroidery threads, although I wish I had. But I'm just using the DMC on that. It just uses 4 colors, and I'm doing 2 strands over 2 threads of linen on that. Okay. All right, another Carolyn Manning, but this one's a little bit different. This is Halloween Hijinks. And I have a Sal going for this one, a Stitch Along, which you might be aware of. It's hashtag Halloween Hijinks 2022 Sal. Oh my gosh, I hope that's right. I should have double checked before I started filming. In any case, the Sal started last October and we're supposed to be ending at the end of this September. I had divided up the chart into 12 sections for people to stitch if they wanted to follow that. I was trying to follow it and I was pretty good up until May when I went on vacation and I got behind. So I'm still behind, and I don't know if I'm going to get finished in September, but I will definitely get it finished this year, hopefully before Halloween. Oh, so I'm sorry, I wanted to mention, I've said before that this group of patterns, which she calls the Jane's Joy collection, are based on an antique quilt called Dear Jane, and it's kind of famous quilt, and I've just been saying that every time I show this pattern, but I noticed that So Tattered, it's SEW Tattered. If you don't watch her, she has a Flosstube and she's also on Instagram, and if you don't watch her, you absolutely should. She's amazing. She both is a cross stitcher and a quilter, but I'm going to post a picture here, or put in a picture. So this is a picture that So Tattered posted on Instagram, and she went to a quilt show, and this was one of the quilts that she took a picture of, and she posted it, and I asked her if I could use it. It's a modern, obviously a modern interpretation of the Dear Jane quilt, but you can see obviously the resemblance. But I've never had a picture of a modern Dear Jane quilt before to show with this. So thank you so much, Katie, for letting me use that. She actually even sent me a better picture than the one that she posted, so I really appreciate that. So let me show you where I am on Halloween Hijinks. Here's where I am. I should be farther. So as you can see, I'm working in the blocks. I've been working in this area. So I have, see, this is the bottom row of, oops, there's my thread again. This is the bottom row of blocks right here, those little squares. So that's the number of blocks I have to finish, plus the back stitch on them, and then the bottom border. And then I have, oops, that one corner I haven't finished. And I will just say, I mean, this is a very fun project, and I just love how it looks. I mean, I'm crazy about it. But, you know, it's pretty fussy stitching. I mean, the blocks, some of them take quite a few colors because that's the whole idea. Like, they're supposed to look like little, you know, complicated, like little quilt blocks like this, some of them, and, you know, you can see. But they also, some of them have back stitching that actually takes, I always have to allow a good day to get the back stitching done on the blocks for that month because it takes a surprising amount of time to do. I mean, it's not hard or anything. It's just, you know, around eyes and little details that totally make the piece. Just amazing. The design in this is just amazing. I just love it. So this is stitched on 32 count. This is called, I always get this wrong, Stormy Night. No, I think it's just vintage. It's either vintage Stormy Night or just Stormy Night. I'm not sure. Lugana. And it's kind of it's the Zweigart. This is one of their printed fabrics. And I believe it's, yeah, this is 32 count. And I really like their printed fabrics. It's kind of this one is kind of a gray color. So they've got, they've got a gray, they have a white that I also really like. And of course, Vintage Country Mocha, which everybody, well, not everybody likes, but I certainly do. And I've used it for quite a few things. Okay. Not quite last. Okay. Next. Liza's Bouquet. Sorry, this one's very glary. Just it has one of those glossy covers. This is by Ginger and Spice. Very, very, very old. This is from 1992. And this is my oldest WIP, which I've said many times. This will get finished this year. So I had finished the back stitching, or I had finished the cross stitches, all the cross stitches in this, I believe by the end of July, and I started the back stitching in August. So I didn't work on it every day, which was my original plan, but the back stitching is, it's slow going. So I have to take a break from it sometimes. That's just all there is to it. But I'll just show you how we're doing here. Sorry, I tried to wrestle it onto this board. So here's where she is. Oh, it's really hard to show the whole thing here. So, sorry. Let me see if I can show you where I've worked on the back stitching though. So most of the back stitching that I've done has been, well, I started over here. So like I've got all the back stitching done in these leaves and this flower and like up in here and some of the white flowers. And then I actually started moving over. So the back stitching is very straightforward where it's around petals. Well, no, that's not true. It's not straightforward. I don't know how else to say it. It's just back stitching you have to super pay attention to because it takes a lot of counting to get it right. And you can't really eyeball it. But I love how it's coming out. So I'm just taking the attitude, trying to do a little bit at a time. Just keep going and I'll get there eventually. There is still a lot to be done on it. But I try to put in a couple threads, 2 or 3 at least, every time I work on it. And I try to work on it as many days as I can. And some days I've worked on it actually quite a bit because once I get going, I tend to, I think we all do that. Once you get going in something, you just sort of, sometimes you just keep going because it's easier than maybe switching to something else. So she's coming along. We'll see how she goes. Okay, and finally, my last one is a WIP, but also this was a new start for me this month. And I don't have a picture, so I'm going to put one here. And this is actually not an exact picture of what I'm doing because it is this pattern, but I asked the designer actually did a custom version of this pattern for me. So there's going to be, in addition to the 2 little birds on the branch, there's going to be 3 little birds on a lower branch. And this is a gift for a coworker of mine, and she's getting married to a guy who has 3 kids. So the little birds on the lower branch are to symbolize or depict his children. And because, when you have sort of families uniting in that way, it seems kind of, I don't know, it just seemed better to me for a wedding sampler or for a wedding design to include the kids. Okay, so this is on 36 count Vintage Country Mocha linen, and I'll explain what I did with the threads here in just a minute, but let me show you what I've got. So here's my start on this. Here's where I am. I'll show it from back here and then I'll show it a little bit closer. So that's the color of the fabric. And obviously this is that upper corner. So I'll come a little closer, and again, the colors get washed out, but you can see. So what I'm doing for threads on this one is I'm using 4 colors of variegated DMC in sort of fall shades, and then a brown for the actual tree trunk. So what I did was I kind of drew like loose, I don't know, semicircles or arcs along the tree where I want the different colors of floss to go. And then I just kind of eyeball it from there. So the darker, like this is my darkest variegated color, so that's going to be kind of on the inner part of the tree. And then this is the next one, which is the next darkest. And then this is actually the 3rd color. I don't have the 4th color in yet, which is like a lighter yellow, variegated yellow. So I'll show you the threads. Just take them out here so you can see. So these are the threads. So you can see I have 4 different ones, and there's only one that has a huge amount of, well, not a huge, that has a lot of variegation that's different colors, and that's, that's this one. So that's the only one that I was a little bit worried about, was how that was going to look, if it was going to look too busy. The other ones are much more, they're variegated and it's noticeable, but the color changes are more subtle, and like this is all yellow, this is kind of all rust, this is kind of all like a sandy orangey color. This is the only one that has really different colors in it. So I think as long as I don't overuse this, but that's why I kind of got started like this. I wanted to get in as many colors as I could because I wanted to make sure that I liked it, because if for some reason I didn't, I decided I would still have time to do something else or start again or something. My coworker is getting married in, I think it's toward the end of October, maybe the middle to the end of October. I guess I better find out the date, right? So I can put it on there. So I got to get that done this month for sure. Okay, that's all my whips. Hey, not too bad. Okay, so now I'm going to go through just really quickly a few things that I purchased. I'll try to make this as quick as I can. And I'm sorry, it might be a little bit of rustling because I do have a couple bags here. But as I said, I got some gift cards from 123 Stitch for my birthday. So I ordered some patterns that I'd had on my list of some things I wanted. I got this JBW Antique Rooster sampler, which I've loved for a long time. It's kind of a long, skinny piece, but that might be fun in red. And then I saw somebody, I'm not going to take these out of the plastic, I'm sorry. I know they'll be a little bit glary. I'll try to do what I can. I saw somebody post a finish of this. This is From the Heart Needle Art by Wendy, called Quaker Bee. And it's kind of a gardening type pattern. And I have a friend that's a big gardener, and I've been wanting to do something for her. So I just thought this would make a cute, like a smaller gift that I might actually finish. And then I've loved these Seasons of the Heart from the Blue Flower for a long time. So I went ahead and got all 4 seasons. Here's spring. Summer. I just love these. I don't know when I'm going to start these. I just am happy that I have them. Here's autumn. and winter. I especially love that winter one. Oh, those flowers and the bird, they're just so pretty. Nobody does animals and birds and things like the blue flower. Okay, where's the rest of my stuff here? Okay, I mentioned, well, you saw that I was doing the Circus of Circles pattern. So I also decided to get, with some of my birthday, this one I am going to take out, funds. I also got, this is the Circus of Hearts. So this is another one from that. This is another one from that same series, Circus of Hearts. And I don't know what fabric I'm going to use yet, but I think I'm going to use this thread, which is why I got a whole bunch of it. This is, I don't know how I happened to order some of this. This is a variegated DMC, and I just happened to order some of it for something else, and just a skein of it, and I just fell in love with it, and I need to use it for a whole pattern. And then, let's see. Oh, all right. I also got this garden sampler from Carriage House Samplings, which everybody and their mom is stitching or has stitched, but I love it just like everybody else. I haven't firmly decided on a fabric. What I got was what they recommended on 123 Stitch. I don't think they had the called for, but it's really, I just got like a very sort of plain creamy linen, but I might look in my stash and see, because I see people have been doing it on all kinds of different fabrics and it looks fantastic. So the other thing about this was I was watching Stephanie of Lindy Stitches in her most recent video. She is stitching this and she's quite far. And she mentioned that on these leaves, that instead of doing them in two colors, she was using a variegated green from Silken Colors. So I had to copy Stephanie, and I'm doing exactly the same thing. And I bought the exact green that she's using because I just thought hers looked great, and I thought that was a great idea too, to just save a little bit of stitching stress and not have to change so many colors. So the last thing I got, I think, is I got this kit. This is from Design Works, and this has been quite popular and a lot of people have started it, I know. I don't plan on starting it anytime soon, but I've loved it actually since I first saw it a few months ago. So I don't know, I jumped on the bandwagon. I'm not sure, like I said, when I'll start it, but I love it. And then the only other thing I will show you is my Stitch Me Fabric of the Month fabrics that just came. So these are the August fabrics, so if yours haven't arrived yet and you're in the club and you don't want to see them, you should look away. I get the 32 count neutral linen and 36 count linen in the neutral club and the 32 count linen in the colorful or all colors club. So this is called Lunar. This is the neutral this month, and it's sort of photographing purple, but it's not purple. It's really blue, and although occasionally when I look at it, it has a grayish cast to it, but it's a beautiful bluish color. It's really pretty. Really like that. Her fabrics are just, I'm very happy so far. I've only been in the club a few months, but I really like it. And this one is, this one's Luna Moth. And this is my 32 count. Isn't that beautiful? And Carla, I will just say, you know what this would be perfect for, but I don't know if it's big enough for that Shannon Christine design with the snow and the deer. This is a fat quarter, and on 32 count, that pattern might take something bigger, but I will see, because this is the right color. Beautiful. They're just beautiful. Her fabrics are just great. Okay, so that's all I've got for purchases, or supply replenishment, as I like to call it. Okay, just a quick teeny topic. I asked people in my last video to possibly suggest some topics for teeny topics. And one person mentioned, especially since I had just started my ink circles pattern, could I talk about stitching on dark fabric? And I thought that was a great idea. So I really only have a few tips, and you have to try them and kind of see what works for you. But different things help different people. But one thing that makes the most difference is light. So having good light from above, like being directly under a lamp, and even if you don't normally stitch with a lamp, using a lamp can help. Can help you see the holes in the fabric. But another thing a lot of people do is they put a light from below, like either shining up from the floor, or I've seen people also stitch like on a light box, or on top, kind of right on top of a light box. I'm not sure how that would work. I tried the light on the floor thing, and for me, it didn't work. Weirdly, I felt like it was harder to see the holes, because I felt like, your hands are behind the fabric, and I felt like it was actually harder in some ways to see the holes because my hands were in the way. But I can see that it just depends on how you stitch, and you just need to try things and see what's easier for you. Along those same lines, another tip is to make contrast between your fabric and the background or whatever, is to put something white on your lap, like either a white towel or a white pillowcase. And I do that, and it does help. It's not like a perfect solution where you just can see every hole perfectly, but it really can help, especially if you're having trouble like seeing one hole. You can just kind of, make sure you can see that white pillowcase through it, and you can just pull it right up. But really, what makes the most difference for me is stitching in daylight, number one. So rather than any kind of artificial light, whether it's on the floor or from above, stitching in daylight works the best. So if you have a chance to work on your dark piece in daylight, maybe that's the time to do it. And the other thing is to take it sort of slow and easy. When I'm working on dark fabric, generally black, but sometimes, a dark brown or navy is the same way, can be the same way. Like an hour at a time is what I plan on. I really don't try to push it and work a whole lot longer than that. Obviously, if it's going easily, you can, but I find taking it in smaller doses is also, your eyes don't get as tired, and you don't feel like you're sort of fighting with your project. But probably my best tip is this, and this is, I totally credit Brenda, Handwork Maniac, for this. And if, I'm sure you're all watching Brenda, but in case you aren't, go watch her immediately, because she's absolutely amazing. But she was talking about stitching on fabric one time, black fabric or dark fabric one time, and she said, hey, if you have trouble stitching on black linen or dark linen, use Aida. It's much easier to stitch on. And at that point, I had given up stitching on dark fabrics, because I really I could do it, but it was too much trouble. And it was like this big light bulb went off in my head, and I was like, why didn't I ever think about that? Well, I bought some 16 count black Aida, and thank you, Brenda, thank you, because she's totally right. Aida, even if you normally stitch on linen, Aida is so much easier to stitch in black, partly because there are fewer holes. I mean, you're not finding individual holes between threads. But because of the way Aida is woven, you can sort of, even if you can't see the holes, you can sort of feel them with your needle. You know what I mean? You're working and your needle just pops through the hole. That's just how Aida is. And it makes stitching on black fabric, okay, it's not a dream. I can't lie. It's not a dream. But it's much easier than stitching on any sort of linen or even weave in a dark color. And for me, it made dark colors doable, and in particular, it made black doable. And I'm going to prove that to you right now because I brought two finishes, former finishes, that I stitched on black. And this one is especially appropriate because it's kind of a, I mean, I guess it's kind of a Halloween piece in a way. This was very popular when I finished it on Instagram. This is called Happy Bat. And this is by a designer, Alessandra Adelaide. She's an Italian designer. AAN Designs, I think is her official name. But I know she's been in poor health and she does not design as much anymore. But I used to stitch tons of her designs, and I still have a couple going, but this was my most recent finish of her designs. But look at these amazing colors. And I mean, this was called for black fabric. And I mean, you can see it just, to me, this wouldn't have the same effect on a white fabric. I mean, it has to be on a dark fabric. It has to be on black or something like that, or gray. And I just love this guy. I think this is fantastic. And I actually finished that a couple years ago. And yes, I know it's not finished. So I probably would like to finish that into a pillow or something like that for Halloween. Maybe I'll get to that this year. I probably should. I had to dig this out of my finish bucket to show it today. So the other one I stitched on black this is also from Oh My Stitches, which I mentioned that shop on Etsy, and I mentioned her great wreath designs. So this is actually a gift for a nephew. Kind of a little bit irreverent cross stitch there. So my nephew, he's an adult. This is his kind of humor. He will hang this in his bathroom. And Oh My Stitches, I asked her she actually had this graphic, but in a different wreath of flowers, and I really liked this wreath of flowers because I knew I wanted to do it on black. And she, did a combination, and she redesigned it for me. And she has this one for sale in her shop now, but she did the redesign for me. So I just love how it came out. So this is again on 16 count black Aida, and that's a particular favorite of mine because, as you can see, on 16 count with 2 strands of DMC on black, I get great coverage. I mean, I think it looks great. So 16 count is probably my favorite for that. So those are my finishes on black, and that's the tips I have for stitching on black fabric. I hope those help somebody. There's nothing new there, but if anything helps, give it a try. And for me, switching to black Aida from trying to stitch on linen just made all the difference in the world, and I was actually able to do it. Okay. Just really quickly, plans for September. It's Sampler September, everybody. So I'm definitely going to try to work on as many samplers as I can. I decided to not just pick 3 or 4 or something to focus on. I'm going to just work on samplers as the mood moves me. I have quite a few, but definitely a couple I will work on are Louise Lallier, which is a Reflet de Soie sampler. I haven't worked on that in a couple months, and I just love that one. well, I'll get to the other one in a minute. But so in addition to samplers, well, there's also September Sampler Soiree, which is hosted by Senorita Stitches on Instagram. And if you are interested in that, you can just check out her Instagram, Senorita Stitches. She has all the information there. Basically, for September Sampler Soiree, you stitch reproduction samplers specifically, and she keeps statistics on that. So when you use that hashtag, that's why she asked that it be a reproduction sampler, because she keeps track of how many people sort of stitched how many different samplers over the month and all that. And she's done it now for, I believe this is the sixth year. So those are two sampler things going on. So for me, I'm going to work on those, and then I got to get that wedding tree done because that's a wedding gift. I'm going to try to work on and hopefully get done or close to done Halloween hijinks. I'm going to keep working on my back stitch on Liza's bouquet. And then I decided I'm going to participate in Laura and the New Hampshire Stitchers. She's hosting a BAP to School SAL, B-A-P to School SAL. Actually starts today, September 1st, but of course, you know, if you don't start today, I'm sure that's fine. So the idea is, and you can read more about it on Lauren's Instagram or also on her Flosstube, which is fantastic, by the way. I'm sure you're already watching her, but again, if you aren't, you should be. She just says, hey, go find a big old project and get it kitted up, or, you know, get out that big pattern that you bought and you just wondered when you would ever get around to stitching it, and let's all start those big projects. So it's BAP to School. So my BAP to School is actually one I've already started. And I started this last year. The infamous Dutch Beauty, yes. And if this doesn't qualify as a BAP, nothing does, because this thing is enormous. I don't remember the stitch count, but it's huge. It takes up an entire, well, you can squeeze it on a fat half of 40 count fabric. Squeeze it on a fat half. So let me show you where I am. And I have just sort of the bones of the border done. I'm going to actually just hold this in my hand so I can. So here's the whole thing. So I've got as you can see, I've got sort of that outline viney thing in the border done the whole way around. And then at the very top, on the top border, I have, I just have the little leaves or flower stems or whatever they are, flower pod things, all the way across. I don't have any colors put in yet, I don't think. So, obviously, I'm not very far. And I thought, when she talked about BAP to School, and I'd kind of forgotten about this, and I was looking through my WIPs the other day, and I thought, well, that would be a great thing to work on for BAP to School. So, Lauren, I'm going to join you and hopefully post some pictures today. And work on that. And if I don't get started working on it today, it'll be very soon. So BAP to School, like I said, if you want information on that, you can check New Hampshire Stitchers page. Or her, she has a video where she talks about it too. Okay, that's it. And I succeeded again in going over an hour. I just can't seem to keep it under, but I guess that's the way it goes. I have a lot of WIPs. So, so stay well, everybody. And don't forget to slow down and take life one stitch at a time. See you next time. Bye.